Olá pessoal, você está no canal The Game Father, aqui é o Mr. Emerson e hoje temos o quê? Uma nova entrevista internacional aqui, olha, saindo do forno aqui, entrevista com Jamey Stegmaier. Cara, esse cara é sucesso absoluto, é um dos meus designers preferidos, cara, ele tem jogos sensacionais e ele tem também a editora lá fora, né, que é a Stegmaier, então não confunda, tá? Ele fundou essa editora junto com um cara lá que agora me fugiu o nome, que tem o sobrenome Stone. Então ele pegou o Stone e colocou o Stegmaier dele e formou Stegmaier, que é o nome da editora. Tá? Essa editora traz jogos sensacionais, entre eles Wingspan, Viticulture, o Scythe. Então tem uma cacetada de jogos que ele traz, dos quais ele também é designer. Então olha só, o cara uniu ali o útil ao agradável. Ele mexe com design de board games desde quando o cara era criança, né? Ele já tinha lá na cabeça dele, lá elaborando um monte de coisa lá, e hoje o cara só traz jogos sensacionais. Eu sou fãzaço dele, assim como o Alexander P. Pfister, o Stefan Feld, todos eles figuram aí no hall dos principais designers que eu mais gosto. E ele deu uma entrevista lá da casa dele, lá nos Estados Unidos, onde ele mora, falou um pouco de board game, uma entrevista rápida, tá? Porque ele é um cara muito ocupado, meu. Então eu tentei não encher muito o saco dele, vocês vão ver que foi uma entrevista rápida. O cara é muito simpático, mas muito simpático mesmo. O cara tá sempre sorrindo, não vi a hora de dar entrevista pro canal, porque ele viu que era um canal do Brasil, tá? Falou, nossa, que legal, porque ele tem a parceria aqui, né? Ele tem a parceria com a Grok, Ludofy, que traz os jogos aí dele publicados. Agora ele falou em off aqui pra nós, em off eu não sei, né? Eu acho que já deve estar divulgado isso aí, que ele firmou uma parceria com a Galápagos, cara. Então, olha, os próximos jogos que ele trouxer, muito provavelmente vão vir pela Galápagos. Então a gente já fica preparado aí, porque os jogos dele, cara, tem uma qualidade assim fantástica. Para quem já conhece esses jogos que eu mencionei, os componentes são lindíssimos, manuais, a qualidade dos meeples, olha, são coisas muito bem feitas, tá? Então vamos lá conferir entrevista aí que eu consegui, olha, nossa, eu tô assim estupefato que eu tenha conseguido essa entrevista, que o cara queira dar essa entrevista pro meu canal, porque eu ainda não consigo acreditar que um canal do meu porte, né? Eu não sou um canal grande ainda, mas, cara, eu fiquei surpreso quando ele aceitou o meu convite para dar entrevista aqui pro canal The Game Father. Então tá aí para vocês, em primeira mão, entrevista com o Jamey. Eu não sei se é Jamey ou Jamey, porque o Y dele tá no final, né? Então uma pronúncia meio difícil de falar, mas o Jamey Stegmaier tá aí para vocês, a entrevista dele. Então, aproveitando, né, pedindo para vocês, não deixem de curtir esse vídeo, curta mesmo, cara, porque ficou um vídeo assim espetacular, eu achei muito legal a entrevista que o cara deu. Não deixe de se inscrever no canal, tá? E é isso. Então vamos lá curtir a entrevista com Jamey Stegmaier, da editora Stegmaier, beleza? Vamos lá então curtir. Um abraço, tchau, tchau. Olá pessoal, bem-vindos ao canal do Mr. Emerson, The Game Father. Estamos aqui hoje com a presença ilustre aqui do Jamey Stegmaier. Eu acho que eu falei corretamente. Ele é um dos designers assim, mais famosos que tem nesse ramo de board games, né? Esse cara é idolatrado no mundo inteiro, inclusive aqui no Brasil. Então consegui convencer ele a trazer aqui uma entrevista de 20 minutos, aí, meia hora. Vamos ver, eu vou fazer várias perguntas para ele, vamos ver como que ele responde. Ele é um cara muito simpático, meu. Já deu para perceber aqui conversando com ele um pouco, ele é muito simpático. Então vamos lá, vamos mudar aqui para inglês, depois eu coloco a legenda para o pessoal poder ler, né? Entender o que ele está falando. So, in English now. I think you didn't understand anything that I said.
I didn't, no.
Okay, so let's start the interview. First of all, thank you very much for you to provide me some time to do this interview for the Brazilian fans, because
My pleasure.
I'm pretty sure you have a lot of fans here in Brazil because your games are amazing. So you are not seeing, but on the bottom of the screen here, I listed the most that the people here in Brazil are enjoying the most, including a new release that you are going to do, I think, this year. So we'll talk about this later. So I'd like you to introduce yourself to the guys. So I know that maybe you have been designing games probably since you were a kid. from the forums I was reading before this interview. So tell us a little bit about your history of life, how you became this famous designer, and as we know today. Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to do a quick recap. Like you said, I've been designing games since I was a little kid, but I didn't get into the hobby as a designer as an adult until 2011 when I started designing viticulture. I put that on Kickstarter, and for the first few years, my company was largely based on Kickstarter. I designed viticulture there. We put Euphoria there. Scythe was very big on Kickstarter. And then we moved away from Kickstarter and have operated as kind of a normal publishing company since then, but still trying to use those principles that I learned on Kickstarter now. One of our biggest games is Wingspan. I think Wingspan is in Brazil.
Yes.
It is in Brazil, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and currently we work with 2 companies in Brazil, Grok Games, and I am forgetting the other one because it's brand new.
Ludofy?
No. No, it's, I'll look it up while we're talking. Someone Raphael who worked, Galapagos.
Galapagos, okay. This is one of the biggest publishers that we have here in Brazil. Yeah.
Right. So we'll continue to work with Grok. They've done a great job, and I'm excited to work with Galapagos as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have this company, and you were somehow a owner of this company. How it works? When did he start it?
Yeah, the official moment that it started was when viticulture funded on Kickstarter. If viticulture hadn't funded on Kickstarter, there probably would not be any Stegmaier games. But I did start to partner with a friend of mine, Alan Stone, hence the name of the company. I'm Jamey Stegmaier, he's Alan Stone. We combined our names together. We started working together back in 2012. And now I run the company. I own most of the company, but I do have, Alan still does a few things. And I now have 2 co-workers, Joe, who is our director of communications, and Alex, who just started last week, who is our director of sales. And he'll be working with companies like Grok and Galapagos. He's in charge of that process now.
Right. And we have a lot of games for you published here in Brazil. To mention something, let me see, Scythe, which was one of the famous games you launched here. Tapestry, I don't know how to spell it correctly in English.
Tapestry, yeah,
Tapestry, okay. Viticulture, this one we had a reprint, I think this month, beginning of this month, if I'm not mistaken. It has been sold out in the first 2 days, so it's a huge success. Yeah, I don't know how many copies they provided to the market. I think 1,000 or so. But man, for you to imagine the huge success that your games do here in Brazil, like Wingspan as well. So, and the quality of your games, the publisher, the Stegmaier Games, publishes very good games in terms of quality of the components. I'm pretty impressed, like the quality of the printing of the manual, the quality of the meeples, everything. It's amazing. So thank you very much to bring this to life for the board game fans around the world.
Thank you. Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
Yeah. And my question is for you is how do you decide which game is the best to be published in your publisher? Because we have several types of designers, several types of mechanics, different types of games. I know that Wingspan that has this famous now is becoming a very famous designer. The name of the lady that I forgot right now. And she's about to launch a new game called Mariposas or something like that. So how do you decide which game to publish in your company?
Well, yeah, and Elizabeth Hargrave is the designer you're thinking of, and she is wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
Part of it, so I still design games for Stegmaier Games. So at any given time, I'm usually working on 1 or 2 games, and if those games become good enough, then I just decide that we're going to publish them. And I usually try to make our games what I describe as event games. So they're usually 60 to 90 minutes. They're kind of the main feature of a game night. So we don't publish filler games that play in 15 to 20 minutes.
Right.
And we typically don't publish Twilight Imperium length games that play 5 to 6 hours. Very heavy, right? So we're kind of in that middle ground, middleweight Euro games that are the main feature of a game night. And so some of the games are games that I designed, but we also accept submissions from other designers who follow the guidelines for the types of games that we're looking for, and we consider them. That's how we found Pendulum. That's how we found Wingspan. They submitted their game to us, and we really liked what they put together.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that let's talk a little bit about this Pendulum game, because I think Grok has announced here to be launched sometime in December, I think. And it's a Euro game, right? Tell us a little bit more about this game, please.
So yeah, Pendulum it's a worker placement game with engine building elements, and it uses time as the main resource in the game. So it's a time optimization game. I compare it most closely to Tzolk'in. Have you played Tzolk'in?
Tzolk'in, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in Tzolk'in and in Pendulum, you're placing down workers, and if you're able to let those workers sit on the board for a long time, their benefits become better and better, and then you pull them off and you get a really powerful benefit. And that is the case in Pendulum, where if you put a worker on an action that takes a longer amount of time, when you pull that worker off the board, you're going to get a really, really good benefit. Opposed to workers that you just put on the board for a little while. So I love that. Tzolk'in is one of my favorite games, and that's what drew me to Pendulum, that you have this time optimization along with worker placement and engine building.
Okay. And when it's going to be released? Is this year, no?
I don't know the exact date for Grok, but December does sound about right for it. Yeah, we've released the English version. Well, the English version will be released on October 2nd in the US and around the world. Yeah.
So it's directly to sale, no? There's no Kickstarter or something like that.
We did a little pre-order. So the way that we usually work now is that we make the game, and then we do a direct pre-order for people who want to buy directly from us. Right. And that's usually about 7 to 8 weeks before the retail release. And so the retail release for Pendulum was October 2nd. In early August, we did the pre-order.
Okay. So among those games that you have published in your company, and especially talking about the games you design yourself, which is your favorite game?
My favorite? That's always hard to answer. I would say, I'm talking to you right now, so my favorite game for you answering that would be the game that you would be most excited to play with me. So which of our games would you be the most excited to play with me?
Let me see. I think maybe Viticulture, because I like wine, so it's an automatic game. So I think maybe Viticulture. Yeah. So
that would be my answer too. I love all of our games, and so I would be the most excited to play Viticulture with you then.
It's difficult to choose one. I know. I understand.
Yeah.
It's our child, no? Your children.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So, talking about your creation process, once you are a very famous designer, we like to know how you imagine a new game. How is the creation process? The idea just pop out of your mind, or it's a half idea that you were growing over the years before releasing it? So tell us a little bit about this process.
Yeah, it depends on the game to a certain extent. I get ideas from a lot of different sources. I play a lot of board games. I love playing games by other publishers, other designers, to get ideas for themes and mechanisms and components. There's so many other great publishers out there. I also consume a lot of fiction. So I watch movies, I read books, I watch TV shows, and I get a lot of ideas from those sources as well. And sometimes I get ideas from like the art. Like Scythe was a game where the artist had started to create a world, and he started to share art from that world, and it caught my attention. I loved what he was creating, and I wanted to design a game in that world. Whereas other times I just have an idea for a mechanism and I take off from there. Okay. So currently I'm working on 2 games. One is an open world game, and that was inspired by Zelda Breath of the Wild, like the video game. It was a video game inspiration.
Yeah.
And then I'm also, that's kind of the main game that I'm working on right now.
Okay. Yeah. It's like a sandbox game, no? You can do everything you want.
Yeah, open world sandbox exploration. Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting. Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, so you will be. So, and talk a little bit more about this designing process. What tips do you give for people who wants to start developing games? Because it's now a thing that the people want to do. No, here in Brazil have several new. It's not a Kickstarter because you have on our site, on site here of production, like it calls Catarse. I don't know if you heard about it. It's like a partnership with Kickstarter. Once you have their launched outside abroad, you have the same thing here in Catarse. It's more or less a Kickstarter, yeah. So there's a bunch of new games popping up, Every day you have a new guy trying to adventure in this board gaming area. So what
Uh,
kind of tips can you provide to those people?
Yeah, for new designers, I think it is helpful to play a lot of different games and read a lot of games. You know, you can't play every game, but you can listen to people like you talk about games. You can listen to reviewers talk about games. I think
Hmm.
that's really helpful. I also think it's helpful to get the game to the table. I think it's one thing to have an idea for a game, but to actually transform that idea into even very rough components and actually play it for the first time
Prototype, no?
can be
Yeah.
really helpful. Yeah,
Hmm.
because I mean, even now, I've designed many games now, and even now, the idea of a game that I have in my head is very different than how it actually plays on the table. So it's really important for me to actually start playing it and see how people react to it, see how my friends play it, see how people local here play it. So I think those two things are very helpful steps to get at the table and play a lot of other games and learn from those other games.
And you usually use the digital platforms to validate the solution you just developed? No, just real board game solution. Because it's a
Um,
tendency, no?
yeah,
People are using the Tabletopia, they are using the board game
right.
arena and tabletop simulator, and
I think that, yeah, especially for prototyping, I've seen a lot more people use Tabletopia,
hmm
Tabletop Simulator. I've used them a little bit, but it's it adds a whole level of difficulty that is very different. Like on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator, if I want to pick up a cube and move it across the board, it I have to really think about that. And when I'm thinking about how to do that, that very simple thing,
hmm
it's taking me away from thinking about the game design or the strategy, things like that.
hmm
Whereas in real life, if I want to pick up a cube, I don't have to think about it, right? I just use my hand to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So I think they're great platforms, but I much prefer to play test in person if I can. Well, I know that's difficult right now, but
Yeah, right now it
yeah,
is. But this
yeah,
is the best way to play board games, right? To have the people together.
right,
This is the whole sense of everything of the board game.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
And what do you know about the Brazilian market here? Because you have some partnership with Grok, now with Galapagos, so you know some Brazilian designers, you know how the people behaves here in Brazil, the type of games we like the most.
Yeah, I know. I don't know a lot, but I know a little. I know one of my favorite games, Cartographers, was
Oh
designed by
yeah,
a Brazilian
yeah.
designer. I love
Hmm.
Cartographers.
Yes,
I know that importing games into Brazil is fairly expensive because they're very high import
expensive,
fees. And
very
so we've been
expensive.
looking with our partners there to produce more of the components in Brazil itself
Hmm.
so that our partners can avoid some of those high fees. There's certain
Hmm.
components that I think are still only made in China, but a
Hmm.
lot of the paper products, the boxes, the cards, the boards, the game boards, they can be made just as well in Brazil as they can anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So I think that's great that you have a growing manufacturing base in Brazil as well.
It's
Yeah.
complicated. This is the most complication that we face here in Brazil. Once you, for example, have a new Kickstarter that you are very interested to acquire, but when you
Mhm.
see the freight and then when you see the taxes that you are gonna pay, the game could cost 3 times more. So it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we just gave up,
Yeah.
because now that the exchange rate for the dollar here, I think it's 5 times, almost 6 times more the dollar
Yeah.
exchange. So for us, is gonna be, and the price of the games locally, I can tell you, they are becoming very, very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even for,
How is
yeah.
Brazil? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, I was going to ask in terms of the pandemic, the coronavirus. I think Brazil has been hit pretty hard, just like
Yeah.
the U.S. has. And in the U.S., we saw board game sales actually go up because more
Hmm.
people were locked. You know, they were staying at home. They were looking for entertainment at home.
Hmm.
Has that been the same case in
Yes,
Brazil?
the same
Yeah.
case. Yeah. And they are continuing to release. We never seen before here so many games being released at the same time. This is the first time in
Hmm.
history. So we have several games being launched every week. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
But now we are complaining because you have several games to acquire to buy, but at the same time the
Uh,
price is high. So
right.
we don't
Right.
have a balance. No, you want to buy everything, but you have enough money to do so. So
Right.
it's complicated. But about the pandemic,
Yeah.
it's decreasing now. The curve is decreasing. We are not on the top
Oh, good.
anymore, so it's decreasing. But even the people need to be careful. Now, when you walk on the streets, you can see people not wearing masks. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
I think it's everywhere the same. No.
we have that problem in the U.S. too. But yeah, I wear masks everywhere I go.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully more people will do that.
It's not to protect yourself, no, it's to avoid to
Yeah,
contaminate other people, for example.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
this is human behavior, unfortunately,
yeah,
human behavior. So
yeah.
just so two more questions. What's your favorite type of games? I think it's Hero, right? You don't like Ameritrash, or you have just a little, you know?
I do love Euro games. The main reason is I love having control over my choices in games.
Hmm.
But I do also love I would say the closest Ameritrash mechanism I love is push your luck.
Push
I
your luck.
do love the push your luck or press your luck mechanism. That is a lot of fun to me. Because then I do love dice rolling. I love luck, but I like to have a little bit of control over it. So yeah, it would say my favorite style of games are I typically play mostly medium weight Euro games.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what's the let's see, the Ameritrash ones. What's the
The
most what's the favorite game about the Ameritrash ones?
the most Ameritrash game, the closest that I probably get is, have you played Kemet?
Kemet, yeah. Uh-huh.
Kemet, yeah.
Yeah.
So Kemet it's a wonderful game of, interaction and combat, which I
Yeah.
think is traditionally an Ameritrash thing. It does have very strong Euro mechanisms in it,
Hmm.
but like if I'm going to play a game where I'm fighting with other and interacting heavily with other players, it's going to be Kemet.
Yeah. This is very nice. You have
Yeah.
the Egyptian theme, and also
Uh-huh.
it has a huge Kickstarter recently, no? And also here in Brazil. So they
Yeah.
do, simultaneously in US and
Hmm.
I think in US, no? I think Kemet, I don't know. The publisher, I don't
US
remember.
and France. It's a
Yeah.
French publisher, but they did one in the US too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And here in Brazil, it was also a huge success. They break
Oh, great.
the barrier. I think they won. I don't know the amount now, but I think they acquire four times more of the amount they want. So
Oh, wow.
it's a record. So it's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah, because the game is quite
Yeah.
beautiful. No, the mechanics, just like you said, it's a pretty
Oh, yeah.
amazing game. Yeah. Okay, so for
Yeah.
just to close the interview, because I promised you 20 minutes and we are approach that. So my,
Oh, yeah.
my my final question to you is, what message do you send? Do you want to send to the your fans here in Brazil?
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I love that there are people in Brazil, many people who are playing our games and playing games in general. I
Mhm.
love this hobby, I love this industry, and I'm excited to see it grow around the world, not just in the U.S. where I'm from, but everywhere in South America, including Brazil.
Mhm.
Um, I love that. Yeah, so I thank you so much for supporting our games if you're in Brazil or supporting any and playing any games.
I know,
Yeah.
of course. Every time you release one game, I pretty much that will be sold out here. All those games that I mentioned to you, exception by Wingspan, because we had a reprint recently. Scythe, Tapestry, Viticulture, all of them are just sold out here. You cannot find any copy, and if you are lucky to find a copy in the second-hand market, will cost a lot of money.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. So
We'll
people
have to talk
here,
to Grok
yeah,
then. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll have to make some more games for you then. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so thank you very much for this time you provided me to do this interview. I'm very fan of you as well, just like I think the most of the Brazilians over here. So thank you very
Thanks.
much. Anytime you want to contact me, it will be a pleasure. My channel here in Brazil is not the biggest one part of the biggest ones. I think you know Jack, right, from Meeple TV. I think you know, let me see what else. Covil. You have Paulo, right? Yeah, you know those guys. So I'm growing a little bit, step by step, but I will get there sometime in the future.
Yeah, you will. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
good luck.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks.
So thank you very much again, and see you in another opportunity. Thank you very much.
Sounds great. Have a great
Okay.
day.
Bye bye.
Bye.